Duncan McNabb here, February 2025. It's the beginning of the Australian working year, I suppose. The summer holidays are long gone, kids have just gone back to school. And it's a time that always reminds me of a case you just can't get out of your head, and certainly in my case, I can't get out of my head. It's the story of the Beaumont kids, Jane, age 9, Arna, her sister, age 7, and little Grant, then age 5. The Beaumont kids disappeared from Glenelg Beach in Adelaide on Australia Day, the 26th of January, 1966. It was, as I mentioned, I think in an earlier chat, after the Wanda Beach murders changed a way Australian parents considered what their kids would be doing during holidays. The Beaumont case a year later sealed it. A lot of our innocence disappeared when those 3 kids went as well. It is an absolutely tragic story. I'll just go through it very quickly to give you a taste of what it's about. Jane, Arna and Grant, responsible kids. Jane, very responsible, smart, sensible. They had on occasions gone to the beach on their own. Their mum would give them bus fare. They'd take the bus to the beach with enough money to also buy lunch, and they'd come back early afternoon. Things Australian kids did at that time. It's well before we knew what stranger danger was. Mr. Beaumont had been possibly a little apprehensive. He had on a couple of occasions followed them to the beach surreptitiously to make sure they were okay, and found that the kids were fine. Now, on the 26th of January 1966, Mr. Beaumont was away working. He was at a place called Snowtown, later to become infamous for very different reasons. One of the most terrible crimes in Australian history happened in Snowtown. Decades later, in the morning, and it was a stinking hot, blisteringly hot Australian day, Mrs. Beaumont took the kids to the bus stop, which was adjacent to their house, for the very, very short bus ride into Glenelg. The kids had done it many, many times. It's what Australian kids did in those days. We took ourselves to school, for example, as well. The kids got to the beach. Presumably, they were spotted by a few people around the Collie Reserve area adjacent to the waterfront. But by early afternoon, they hadn't come home. Mrs. Beaumont was terrified, beside herself, torn between waiting at home to see if they'd return or going out to try and find them. Fortunately, Mr. Beaumont did come back early to mid-afternoon, and he immediately starts working the beaches, driving up and down, trying to find the kids or some evidence of where they'd been. He has absolutely no luck. He sees nothing. At dusk, he goes to the Glenelg police station and raises the alarm. The local cops swing into action very, very quickly. One of the old detectives, Mostyn Matters, who was a young detective back in those days, remembers the case vividly. And he said that the police reacted fast and decisively. What he was critical about was that they also let the senior police in Adelaide, about 25-minute drive back in those days, they let them know about it, and they didn't exactly swing into action to support them. So it was very much a local gig that night, searching for the Beaumont kids. They've never been found, not even a trace. In the course of that investigation, and this wasn't released apparently until a year after the kids had gone missing, the police canvass of the area, and it's canvassed by, you literally knock on doors and ask everyone you can. They'd gone to Wenzel's Pie Shop, not far from the beach, and the person behind the counter clearly remembers the 3 kids coming in. And she remembers that I think they bought a number of pastries, including pasties, which is a sort of Cornish miner's snack or miner's lunch. It's basically like a meat pie, a fold over that you can't possibly, the risk of it dribbling down your cheek is significantly reduced. It's easy to eat if you're out on the beach, bottom line there. They'd bought those, but the shop assistant remembers with great clarity that they didn't pay for them with the coins, and they paid for them with a crisp £1 note. Now, this is back in the days before decimal currency. The £1 note was a reasonable amount of money back in those days, and certainly a crisp one in the hands of a 9-year-old, not all that common. Mrs. Beaumont remembers clearly that the children did not have a £1 note, that they only had coins, about I think 7 and 6 from memory, which is significantly less, just enough to get them lunch. So this £1 note is a key piece of evidence. Where did they get the £1 note from? But unfortunately, no suspects at all. The case went internationally. The police hunt was extensive. Sex offenders were considered and discarded. People actually tried to confess to it, as they invariably do, which just slows the investigation down. One well-meaning local decided to bring out a well-known Dutch psychic called Gerald Croiset. He arrived to great acclaim in Adelaide. Apparently there was a bigger crowd at the airport than when the Beatles arrived. Mr. Croiset sort of wanders around, film cameras everywhere, of course recording his every utterance in those days. Come up with a couple of theories, all of which were complete bullshit, and then wandered off again, presumably reasonably well, with a well-packed wallet of money. A great stunt, but to no particular avail, and possibly a distraction for the investigation. And there are plenty of other distractions over the years too, with people making false claims and so on and so forth. Just horrible stuff. The Beaumont case has a number of bizarre aspects. One, that there was no clear evidence as to what happened to them. Their bodies have never been found, and it is extraordinarily unusual in world history for 3 kids to be abducted simultaneously during peacetime. This is just not unique, but so damn close to it, it's not funny. It's a sad and very, very odd case. Now, I got involved, probably the best part of almost coming up to a decade ago, I suppose, when I was doing work for a television channel in Australia, the 7 network. We had sufficient funds to go and start scratching around in Adelaide to see if we could get some evidence which may kick the case along. Within a couple of hours, thanks to some useful contacts down there, I'd met the old detective Mostyn Matters, who was terrific. This is a guy who has taken this case into his retirement and is always there to help or to support the families. Great bloke. I also spoke to a few other people and eventually chatted to a local private investigator, former copper, called Bill Hayes, a terrific investigator who'd been involved in looking at the case more recently and had interviewed some interesting people, one of whom was a bloke called Phipps, the son of a chap called Harry. Now, Harry Phipps was a well-known local. He lived in a somewhat large but somewhat, I found it rather creepy looking house not far from the beach, so easy walk for the kids. He was also incredibly well connected in Adelaide society and worth lots of money. He had a factory making automotive parts out of North Plimpton. His son, and they were estranged, his son had been interviewed by Bill Hayes not terribly long before I got involved. And his son had said, and I'm running off memory here, his son had said that he had actually recalled the afternoon the Beaumonts went missing and that he had seen his father lead 3 little kids from their back gate into the house and hadn't seen them since. Now, the story he told about his father was a drunk, a brute, an assailant. He also liked to cross-dress in satin. He also had weapons in the house. And there was also, I think from memory, a cellar and a very, very creepy attic. Putting together the case and talking to other people, Harry Phipps was firming up into a reasonably good suspect. The best of a bunch of suspects we've seen so far. But the case still remains unsolved. Phipps is the prime suspect for it, to the point that a couple of young fellows that we were investigating had come forward some years beforehand and told the cops that they had dug a hole on Harry Phipps's factory property and paid well and told to go away after he'd done it. The cops had gone out there, I think from about 2013, and had a bit of a dig round and found nothing. We went back to the original plans and actually found that the cops had dug in the wrong site. Eureka, we thought, hopefully anyway. In around about, I think it was 2017, 2018, we also got police consent to do a proper dig. Now, you just don't turn up there with a shovel and hope for the best. It has to be done by qualified, skilled architects and having forensic anthropologists nearby. It is meticulous. We're allowed to dig in a very, very small area, a very restricted dig. Ground penetrating radar indicated there was something down there. And it's one of the great sadnesses is when we actually dug down, we did find something, but they were animal bones. The spot where these 2 young fellows had dug was spot on. It was exactly the right place, but we didn't find anything at all that was of any use. So it's one of those cases I'll always have with me. Still fascinated to see if we can progress it. One of the saddest things, of many sad things about this case, is that the Beaumonts' marriage collapsed, but both mother and father stayed literally within about 1 kilometre of each other. And I remember the mother once told in one of her very, very few media appearances that she wasn't planning on moving, neither was her husband, simply because no matter how long it took, their kids, Jane, Arna and Grant, might come home. It's a sad, compelling case, and thank you for listening. Thank you.